Blind Citizens Australia proudly presents the An Eye to the Future Job Ready Workshop Series. Creating a diverse and inclusive workplace culture. Hosted by Blind Citizens Australia with special guests Christopher Sims, Customer Care Banker, ANZ, and Rodo Israel Mainque, Customer Care Team Leader, ANZ.
So let's start with our acknowledgement to country. I acknowledge the traditional custodians of the various lands that we are all coming from today for this physically dispersed meeting. I am coming to you from the Gadigal lands of the Eora Nation, and I pay my respects to their elders past, present, and emerging, and to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people of Australia. As we gather for this physically dispersed meeting, let us take a moment to reflect upon the meaning of place, and in doing so, recognize the various traditional lands on which we gather today. Okay, so my name is Claire. I am a project officer with Eye to the Future. With us today, we have my colleague Maddie, who is also a project officer with Eye to the Future. And we have two guest speakers with us today, Christopher Sims and Rodo Israel Mainque from ANZ Bank, who we will be hearing from very shortly. So for those of you who don't know, An Eye to the Future is an initiative from Blind Citizens Australia that recognises the career potential of people who are blind or vision impaired. And this initiative is made possible by funding grants from the Department of Social Services. We support job seekers with job readiness, including the job search, resume and cover letter preparation, interview preparation, and help to identify other supports that are available for entering the workforce. And we also support employers like you to create diverse and inclusive workplaces. And we do this by providing education and support services that help employers to think differently about their advertising, recruitment, and workplace processes to make them more accessible and inclusive. We work with both employee and employer at every step of the hiring process to support employing someone who is blind or vision impaired as they settle into the workplace. So in today's workshop, we are going to hear success stories of people who are blind or vision impaired and their managers who have effectively navigated this space of accessibility and inclusion in the workplace. We will hear about the benefits to the workplace and some supports and strategies for effectively overcoming barriers. So let's begin by introducing our guest speakers today, Christopher Sims and Rodo Israel Mainque. Welcome, Christopher and Rodo, and thank you for joining us today to share your experiences and insights on this topic.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us, Ben.
No, you're very welcome, and we're really looking forward to hearing from you today. And I know that I've introduced you briefly, but would you perhaps mind just introducing yourselves and tell us your official role at ANZ Bank before we get into asking you some questions about your experience? So perhaps let's start with you, Chris.
Absolutely. It's actually Christopher, not Chris, and but I'll accept Chris in this case. So my name's Christopher Sims. I'm a customer care banker in the ANZ contact centre. I've been on the phones helping customers navigate internet banking for the past 8 years.
Thank you, Christopher, and thank you for letting me know your preferences. And over to you, Rodo.
Thank you, Claire. Yes, hi everyone. My name is Rodo. I'm a team leader at ANZ. I've been with the bank for 11 years now. I started on the phones as well as a customer service representative, moved up and became a subject matter expert, and eventually got promoted to a team leader role.
Great, thank you. Okay, so perhaps again, we're going to move back and start with you, Christopher, if that's okay.
Sure, absolutely.
So could you tell us more about your role at ANZ and your successes so far?
Yeah, so basically my role at ANZ sees me basically on the phones, helping customers with internet banking. This can range from anything from a simple password reset to various cases of being, locked out of internet banking, confirming transactions, etc. As I say, originally I started with ANZ back in 2014.
Great, thank you, Chris. So can you tell us a little bit about your journey to getting the job at ANZ?
Absolutely. So my journey, I originally cut my teeth in doing debt collection, working for a company on the better side of the debt collection industry. I was there for 4 years, and while I enjoyed that, it was mainly outbound with a little bit of inbound, and basically I left due to personal reasons. The opportunity then came up to go to another one of the major banks, but unfortunately, due to some issues on their side, I never got past training because, in short, they hadn't done the appropriate homework, and I left on mutual terms. Then basically that brings us to late 2013, and then the ANZ opportunity, actually early 2014, the ANZ opportunity arose, and I grabbed it with both hands. I was a little nervous initially because I was doing an interview with an agency. And I should say Vision Australia, Paul Roberts at Vision Australia actually identified the role. So shout out to the Vision Australia DES team, great group. Specifically, Paul Roberts found the role, and I interviewed with an employment agency. I was initially agency staff, and then got made permanent. And as I say, started in 2014. There were some hard times through training, but these days I consistently am at the top of the rankings as far as the way I deal with customers. Customers absolutely consistently are raving about the great experience they have when they get me on the other end of the call.
That's fantastic, Christopher. And what I'm hearing from your story is that you had some supports from Vision Australia in terms of entering into ANZ Bank. Correct. In that role.
That's right.
Okay, so I'm wondering, once you're in the role, what supports and adjustments are in place now or were in place in the beginning to enable you to be so successful in your role?
So when I've entered ANZ, I was not the first person who had come through. There's been 2 other people before me who had trained. I was actually trained under one of the people that has since moved on from the contact centre, and he works in a different part of the organisation. But I mean, he's still available when we perhaps need him. The main adjustments that we have is that from time to time there is a requirement. There's a requirement to do manual security questions, and that has been, whenever that requirement happens, instead of me doing it, I actually transfer the call to one of my colleagues, and they basically take over the call. Likewise, we have a couple of black screen systems that are deemed that just aren't accessible with a screen reader, and basically when those systems need to be accessed and that's the only way, those calls are also transferred. So essentially I get an allowance for transfers. The third and fourth adjustments are basically around extra time to complete some tasks, and the occasional instance of a remote control screen share if I'm having some issues with some of our online courses.
Right. So it sounds like, if I'm right in what I've been hearing, that you've had adjustments to workplace tasks in that ability to transfer calls on. You've also had some adjustments in terms of assistive technology, so using a screen reader to be able to complete the work you do in the workplace.
That's right.
And can I ask, do you work in on site, or do you work from home? Do you have any adjustments around your working arrangements in that way?
Absolutely. So I am hybrid, and I mean, we only need to be 1 day a week on site, but I routinely exceed that requirement just because I live so close. Recently, and yes, there have been adjustments to that requirement. For example, recently there was an additional training group that was in, and they were training in my area, and so the decision was taken that rather than to give me the choice of did I want to stay at home, which I happily took them up on. So yeah.
Okay, so hybrid working conditions, and that's been really beneficial.
Oh yes.
Yeah. Okay, great. Just one more question before we head over to Rodo. So, from your experiences, what would you like employers to know about supporting someone who is blind or vision impaired?
So basically, hiring someone who is blind/vision impaired, it's pretty much a 100% upside. Someone like myself is a master at the problem-solving game. The chances are that whatever problem is presented, be that in an interview situation, pre-employment, or a post-employment situation, the chances are that I've probably come up with some kind of a solution that I will discuss with you and then work it through. There's also a lot of support available from the likes of Vision Australia, Job Access, and a number of other places, which I'm sure that the likes of Claire and Madison would be more than happy to discuss further with you. Yes, 100% upside.
Yes.
It would also be, I suppose it would be handy to, if you were able to tell a potential candidate if the role has been done before by someone using a screen reader or adaptive tech, if possible.
Yes, okay. So workplaces having some experience can be really helpful. And I'm hearing that those supports from various organisations like ours and Vision Australia, Job Access, have been kind of instrumental in providing those supports and adjustments in the workplace. And I mean, we'll move over to Rodo now to hear, but definitely huge benefits to the workplace in terms of that inclusion.
Yeah, just I suppose one more thing. Slack and Teams are both work well with adaptive tech.
Yeah, okay. So the assistive technology works really well with the inbuilt systems of many workplaces.
Yes, and in cases where it might be a little borderline, then there can be scripting done to basically remediate some things.
Okay. And one of the other things I heard you saying, Chris, which I think is really important to, reiterate, is all the transferable skills that you've gained in terms of that problem solving and overcoming barriers effectively, and that open communication and conversation with your employer.
Correct.
Which would have huge benefits, and they're transferable skills for any role, to be honest.
That's right. And for anyone after post the workshop, if you have any further questions, I'm always happy to answer where I can.
Thank you, Christopher. And we're certainly going to, we'll move over to Rodo, and then after that, we are going to open up the floor for some questions if anyone has any. Okay, so I'm going to come over to you now, Rodo. Can you tell us more about your role at ANZ and the successes so far from your perspective as a manager, as Christopher's manager?
Certainly. Thank you, Claire. Yes, I'm a team leader in the ANZ Contact Centre. So we have a total of 6 customer care teams in Melbourne. I manage one of them. A team of 15 members, and there are 2 bankers with vision impairment in the team. What we do, we are the first point of contact for our customers to resolve their various banking inquiries, such as internet banking, can be credit card inquiries, and general retail questions. It can be just something like simple internet banking password reset to the more complex internet banking fraud or card fraudulent transactions inquiries. So it is a fast-paced environment. Bankers generally receive 30 to 40 calls a day. This is a combination of easy and some challenging calls as well. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And so really, what has been your experience of having Christopher in your team?
It's been great. Christopher is very good in communicating. I believe that communication is key. So I make sure that I've provided Christopher access to information and that he can communicate effectively. This includes providing documents and materials in accessible formats, and ensure that the JAWS systems work efficiently for him. By the way, JAWS is an acronym for the Job Access with Speech. It's a screen reader, basically. Very successful in his role. In fact, he's one of the best bankers on the team. And Christopher just recently got awarded as the Contact Center Gold Headset winner. So this is for displaying exceptional customer service and for modeling what a great customer service interaction should sound like. I'm very proud of him. And I'm going to say that it's not because you're hearing this, Christopher, but it is that in the past, we need 100 Christophers within the contact center. So yeah, he is great at his job. Every morning, he says hello to the team. It might be online or Microsoft Teams, or in person. So his positive attitude is contagious within the team. I'm very lucky to have him. The team and Christopher's success is because of I think it's how we collaborate as a team. And Christopher has an exceptional problem-solving skills, as I mentioned earlier, a great attention to detail, very unselfish, genuinely cares for his teammates. And on the flip side of that as well, the rest of the team looks after Christopher. So it's great to have him on the team.
Wow, thank you, Rodo. That was amazing to hear all of those amazing successes and benefits to the workplace. And congratulations, Christopher.
Yeah, no.
So
thank you.
From a manager's perspective, Rodo, how did you put in place some of the supports and adjustments that you've just talked about to enable Christopher to be successful in his role? How did you go about it?
Yeah, I think it comes down to having open communication and to be inclusive. As I've mentioned earlier, he's a great communicator. So Christopher used the JAWS screen reader, and he always let me know if something is not working or if he feels like there's something we can do to improve the systems or perhaps the process, for example. He's best in providing suggestions as well on how we can resolve things. And unlike that, that helps me identify the issue in a timely manner. Now, as an organization, we provide various accessibility systems. I've mentioned the use of the screen reader, which is the system several of our other visually impaired team members utilize. In a nutshell, basically, the system relays screen information in an auditory fashion through headphones used for the call. It will basically read or highlight, it will read what is highlighted by the bankers from the screen. With open communication, it would be easier for us to identify problems and come up with a solution. And the majority of these are resolved very quickly, which is great. Christopher is successful in his role, and a big part of that success is his problem-solving skills. It's next level. He's very creative on his approach on how to achieve or complete a task. And I think this is very important to understand that the task for the role can be completed in a variety of ways. Focused on what needs to be done rather than how it needs to be done. As long as we get to the goal, no problems at all. And also we have a great group of people or support group within the organization that we can reach out to if needed. So it's a much easier for me to tailor a plan and tackle whatever challenges we encounter along the way. Regarding adjustments, I think just very small adjustments, as the saying goes, often small adjustments can make a big difference. So I truly believe in that one. A good example is when sending an email, I make sure that there is an accessible version of it for the screen reader to work effectively. The screen reader won't work if you have screenshots or snippet of a photo. So just make sure that the text version of that email is sent as well. Another example is during team meetings. I always book our team meetings in advance to ensure that I'm able to book the most convenient room in the building, which has accessibility facilities and easy for the bankers to get to or navigate. It will always be on the same floor where we take calls, so and must be familiar to room to everyone, so they don't have to go to third floor or other floors. It's going to be very easy and accessible. I think that's the adjustments that I can share with you for now, Claire.
Thank you. And yeah, sounds like, and we can certainly speak to that from our experience of working with many different employers and many different employees who are blind or vision impaired around those simple but highly effective supports in place. And just as you've said, in terms of putting adjustments in to make sure that wayfinding is easier, or putting adjustments into place to make sure that the information that we share is accessible. So thank you very much for sharing those. And really, from your experience of working with Christopher and others, it sounds like, who are blind or vision impaired, what would you like employers to know about employing someone who is blind or vision impaired?
Certainly, yes. Employing someone who is blind or visually impaired can be a positive experience for both employer and the employee when the necessary consideration and accommodations are in place. It can contribute to a diverse and inclusive work environment and lead to a valuable contribution for employees and diverse abilities. Christopher is as productive as his colleagues, if not better. As I mentioned, that the role tasks can be completed in a variety of ways. Although Christopher may use a different approach, he is as productive as his colleagues. It is important to understand that blind employees are very capable of performing a wide range of tasks, often with remarkable proficiency, and providing the necessary adjustments and training can unlock their full potential. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And just before we open up to some questions and answers, I just wanted to ask you both one final question each. So we'll start with you, Rodo. What 3 pieces of advice would you like employers to walk away with today as they take their first steps to creating a diverse and inclusive workplace?
Yeah, commit to diversity and inclusion. That's one. So make a clear and continuing commitment to diversity and inclusion. It should be a fundamental value of an organization, and it's very important that it is championed by leadership. The second one I can think of is educate and train to build disability confidence. So for example, there is I to the Future program, job access, and many more out there. Invest in diversity and inclusion training for all employees, as this can go a long way. This includes awareness training, just unconscious bias training, and to educate employees as well. Education is key, I think, to fostering a more inclusive workplace. For example, with INZ, we have regular online courses for all employees to go through, and for this reason, to educate everyone on how we can support our colleagues who have vision impairment, for example. And last one, the third one would be just establish inclusive policies. Review and adapt workplace policy to be more inclusive. This includes flexible work arrangements, equal pay, anti-discrimination measures, and support for underrepresented groups. Encourage feedback for employees and have open communication, basically. And yeah, also regularly assess and update this policy to ensure they remain effective.
Thank you so much. Those are 3 great pieces of advice. And we're going to head to Christopher now and ask the same question. So Christopher, what 3 pieces of advice would you like employers to walk away with today as they take their first steps to creating a diverse and inclusive workplace?
Okay, so, I mean, as Rodo has all kind of, I pretty much want to echo a lot of what Rodo has already mentioned. Education is the key. You know, hiring someone like myself need not be a drain. You know, generally, I'm going to, from a productivity standpoint, we will get up to speed, as we will try and be up to speed as quick as others, but at the same time be prepared to adapt training as needed, especially if it's the first time doing it. And yeah, I think that's and you know, there's, just to reiterate a point that I made earlier, there is support out there to audit systems for to make sure that systems are accessibility compliant. You probably should even consider maybe, you know, getting someone to come in and run NVDA and see how much of the job they can complete ahead of time, so that you know what potential work you may have to do to adapt a given role. Forewarned is forearmed.
Great advice. Thank you, Christopher. And I'm going to hand over to my colleague Maddie now, who is going to open up for question and answers. If you would both be open to accepting some questions from anybody, any of our attendees. Over
Absolutely.
to you, Maddie.
Thank you, Claire, and thank you both, Christopher and Rodo, for sharing your experiences and insights. It's been really, really valuable and interesting to hear your stories and input, advice. What's really coming through for me is your positive approach, resilience, the openness to trying different ways to achieve results, to achieve great results. And it's really clear that you are achieving those great outcomes to continue to have many successes within the workplace. So we would open for questions and comments from anyone who's been listening for Chris or Rodo. So if you do have a question or comment, please raise your virtual hand and we will invite you to share your question. Just a quick reminder, to raise your hand on a computer, you can use the keyboard command Alt+Y by holding the Alt key and press the Y key. To raise your hand on a phone, you can also press *9. So I'll start with Sam. Sam, you've got your hand up if you'd like to come off mute and ask your question.
Hi folks, Sam speaking. Thanks so much for that, Christopher and Rodo. I was taking a lot of notes and listening eagerly to your advice. My question, and one of the things that really stood out to me was Rodo's comment about to focus on what needs to be done rather than how it needs to be done. And it sounds like a really simple piece of advice, but actually I imagine there's quite a big cultural shift that needs to happen in an organization. But my question is actually for Christopher. Christopher, I get the sense that when you came across the role description for your job, you knew you could do the job. But my question is, what made you feel like ANZ would be a good employer for you? How did you know they would be accessible and inclusive? Was there anything in the PD or on the website or anything that you'd heard that gave you that confidence?
Thank you, Sam. So I already knew that ANZ employed other vision impaired people in the contact centre. Well, I didn't quite know whether it was the contact centre, but I did know that they employed other vision impaired people. So I knew that when I was applying, I was applying from a position of strength. Typically, when someone like me will go through a job ad, I will think, right, these are the things that I will have done some baseline analysis, and I will have said, right, these are the things I know I'm going to be able to do. These are the things where I may, I'm going to potentially need some further support with. So that's why I refer back to what I said about the fact that someone like myself is a master at problem solving, because from the time I read a given PD or a job description, I will have kind of already formulated it in my head, these are the things. I probably even will have asked some baseline questions around, especially if in the job ad you mention what systems you use. Do you use ServiceNow? Well, I know that the chances are that most of ServiceNow is accessible. I already mentioned Teams and Slack. Likewise, Salesforce. That is nicely, that's nicely accessible. So I think that sets you on the right way.
Sam speaking. Thank you very much. So yeah, naming those different programs is actually a benefit in something like a position description because you're able to see and prepare in advance.
Correct.
Thank
Fantastic. Thank you. Thank you for the question, Sam, and thank you for the response, Christopher. We do have another question from Teresa.
Hi, my name's Teresa. Thank you both for speaking. I'm also a person with a visual impairment, uses screen reader software. And my question is, Christopher, you said that you've worked with ANZ for a number of years, and we are very good at problem solving and adapting with technology and making things that aren't accessible. But on the flip side, have you seen a change in ANZ and how they are moving forward and making things more accessible rather than you having to change things?
Great question. So we have an interesting situation where most of our new stuff is coming out accessible from the start, sort of thing. So there's a lot to be there's a lot of goodness to come out of that.
Yep.
So I suppose, you know, there's a lot of great stuff coming down the pipe. ANZ, my kind of other unofficial role is that, you know, I have been involved in I've had the chance on a number of occasions to play with new toys.
Yep.
That's my other kind of favorite thing, to get a chance to play with new software to kick the tires to make sure that it is going to be accessible. Most of the new stuff, I'm pleased to say, is coming out accessible.
Yep.
There's always the odd strange thing that is managing to fly under the radar. And ironically, a case in point is, recently there was a change in our contact center phone system, which, while it's still accessible, it's not. It's made me very slightly not as productive as
Yep.
I would like.
As a workaround that you have to do in the interim kind of thing. That's another step.
As I say, it's perfectly usable, but you know, I would have rather someone say, "Hey, is this?" You know, I would rather have had a chance to test that first, so I could have said, "Guys, you're going to cause a problem."
So companies in general, I think the consultation process of using screen readers in their making of new systems is still very we'll fix the problem afterwards, not let's get rid of the problem before it starts.
That's right.
I know where I work, the systems in place are very clunky and there's workarounds, and obviously you do it, but new systems come in, you think, let's be innovative. We do all this technology, but they don't think about it at the time of making the system. So yeah, I just want to see ANZ's a large company and to see what their infrastructure is and thinking in the background.
Well, it's there, and for the most part it works, but every now and again there is something that quote unquote manages to slip itself under the radar.
Yeah. Thank you.
Fantastic. Great question, Teresa, and great response, Christopher. And I don't see any other hands up, but we will likely have more opportunity for question and answer at the end of our presentation. So I will say thank you so much to Christopher and Rodo for joining us today. And we are going to move into the next section of our presentation, which is talking a little bit about an eye to the future and sharing some of the success that we've had through an eye to the future. Chris and Rodo did mention support support programs, and an Eye to the Future is an employment program that has supported job seekers who are blind or vision impaired into paid employment opportunities. And as mentioned briefly at the beginning, we work closely with both the employee and the employer to support them through the recruitment process and the employment process. So I'm going to quickly share a video with you of another success story of diversity and inclusion within the workplace. I'm just going to do a quick screen share with sound, and bear with me whilst that loads.
An employee with vision loss is sitting on a bench having a conversation to camera.
I started going through vision loss in 2018. I noticed things were changing, and one thing led to another, and slowly I had to resign, which was my choice, and it changed my whole life. My name is Ranjeev Bard, and I'm here to share my experience with an Eye to the Future project. Everything changed because we live through our eyes. We never think how important our vision is.
Ranjeev stands outdoors near a passing train.
I came to a stage that I thought to myself, I have to really focus and believe in myself. It's not the end of the world. And I started working towards my dream because no one else is going to do it but me. I was very lucky. I came in touch with great organisations.
Two men walking on the street with the camera focused on their legs.
Like Vision Australia, Guide Dogs Victoria, and finally Blind Citizens Australia. And they got me connected with their project, An Eye to the Future. I came in contact with my project manager, my mentor, which is Madison.
A woman, Madison, walks towards the reception and greets Ranjeev, who gets up from his chair. Madison sits on a bench and is speaking to camera.
Hi, my name's Maddie, and I'm one of the project officers for An Eye to the Future at Blind Citizens Australia. When I met Ranjeev, we took the time to discuss his interests and what he wanted to do for a career. And we spent time working on his resume, his cover letter, and job-ready skills so that when an opportunity arose, he was ready to step into that interview with confidence. And that opportunity came about in 3ZZZ.
When we worked out the needs for 3ZZZ in the role, we worked out we have some admin roles and skills and tasks that need to be undertaken within the organisation.
Ranjeev and John exit the office building and walk together.
We also work out that we sort of, whenever someone comes into the organisation, they bring a set of skills that we will utilise within our organisation. I'm John from 3ZZZ, and I became aware of An Eye to the Future project through my professional networks.
John approached An Eye to the Future and expressed interest in our program. And we spent time with John to get to know 3ZZZ, answer any questions that he had about accessibility, an accessible recruitment process, and employing someone who is blind or vision impaired, and made sure that we introduced the right candidate for the role that they had in mind.
Here at 3ZZZ, we are a culturally and linguistically diverse radio station. So we really value diversity. We also value good people. So when we hire people, we're looking for the minimum skill sets to be able to do the basic job, but then we want people to bring in their add-ins, bring in their passions, their interests, so they can grow into the role.
Ranjeev and John working together looking at charts on a monitor that has been enhanced for accessibility.
And somebody who is blind or vision impaired is very capable of doing the role. They may do it in a slightly different way using the assistive technology that's available to them, but the role is still possible and they will still be able to get the role done. We prepared Ranjeev for the video interview with 3ZZZ.
Got to 3ZZZ with a face-to-face interview. I got an opportunity to do a 3-month internship. So I thought, a door has opened, let me give it a go.
Ranjeev walks as he navigates through the radio station effortlessly.
And coming into the workforce has really given me confidence and hope.
With Ranjeev, he came in with as a musician, as a singer, with a beautiful deep voice.
Ranjeev works in the sound studio, adjusting knobs and instruments.
So for us, as soon as we heard him coming into the radio station, it was a case of, let's get him behind a microphone, let's get him doing our announcements.
Ranjeev works with a male director, doing voiceover using his phone to enhance the script in his hand.
because not only can he do them in English, but he can also do them in Hindi as well. He's giving us a big value add to the role that anyone in this role that we might have advertised on a general seek.com or a LinkedIn would not have been able to bring to this role. Ranjiv's a real personable person.
Ranjiv and John are outside a coffee shop. Ranjiv waves and smiles at the barista.
Working at reception, Ranjiv really connects with a lot of our volunteers. He's able to create unique connections with them.
John is talking to Ranjiv and Ranjiv nods his head in agreement.
And have interesting conversations that they wouldn't be able to create or start with other people who might work at reception at 3ZZZ. On completing the internship, we had tested and worked out that we are a safe, diverse, accessible workplace, and we were able to offer Ranjiv a 12-month contract extension to keep him within the organisation, to nurture his talents and skills so he can be a better employee for us and for other people in the future.
Ranjiv is at his desk and attends to a phone call.
Following the internship, I was offered a 12-month contract, which really has given me so much of hope, confidence. I'm gaining new skills, and it's giving me a vision for my future.
Ranjiv is at his desk and looking at a document using an accessibility device. Ranjiv is working with John and looking at charts on a monitor that has been enhanced for accessibility.
To do voiceover work, doing more admin work in the world of radio. Not to sound too overconfident, but because I've got a musical background and I had been a broadcaster, voiceover is a new interest in my life. And I think through this radio station, I can pursue this further.
Ranjiv, John, and Maddie are standing together outside a coffee shop having a conversation.
Through an Eye to the Future project, I was guided by my mentor, step by step, every process through the resume, application, interview preparation. Returning to the workforce has rebuilt my confidence and has given me so much hope for my future dreams. And I look forward to what's next.
Logo for an Eye to the Future appears with a logo for Blind Citizens Australia.
So that is a brief video of an Eye to the Future and the success story that we've had with Ranjiv and 3ZZZ. And there are other success stories that we are working with and creating at the moment. And we would invite you all to have a conversation with us about how you could get involved with an Eye to the Future and increase the diversity and inclusion with your workplace. And I will now hand over to Claire, who's going to talk to you a little bit about accessible recruitment.
Thank you, Maddie. Yes, so for this last part, we would like to really finish off today's workshop with some inclusive recruitment considerations and practices that you can really walk away with today and put into place in your workplace. So I'm just going to ask Maddie if you wouldn't mind sharing your screen.
My screen has been shared and I believe people will be able to see that.
Thank you. Okay, so let's talk about inclusive recruitment practices. So the question that we firstly normally ask employers is your organisation encouraging people with disability to apply for roles? So let's start with your website. Is your website accessible? The first introduction to your organisation is often through your website. And if these virtual spaces are not compatible with assistive technology like screen readers, as we've heard of today earlier, then people who are blind or vision impaired can't access information about your organisation. So often the first place to start is to look at your website and its accessibility. Next, think about your job adverts. So are your job adverts encouraging people who are blind or vision impaired to apply? So, for instance, do you include a statement about your organization's values and commitment to inclusion and diversity in your organization? In the job advert, do you offer a point of contact for people to request adjustments to the application process if needed? And it's often useful to check your job advert is inclusive and accurately reflects your business needs. So, for instance, one thing that we often see is that driver's license required. However, it's not necessarily that a driver's license is required, but that there are travel requirements. So instead of driver's license required in this case, you could simply state travel required. And people who are blind or vision impaired can use different supports to meet travel requirements. Then think about the application process itself. So what is your process for submitting applications? Do you ask candidates, for instance, to complete online forms? Some people who are blind or vision impaired may find it more accessible to provide a resume and cover letter rather than to complete an inbuilt application form. And then, of course, considering the interview process. So when conducting a face-to-face interview, for example, are there clear instructions for wayfinding into the building and to the required office space? For example, entry on X Street and take the stairs, lift, elevator, etc. to level 1 and turn right, and our office is the third door on the left. And have you considered an accessible location within your office to conduct the interview? So a room close to the office entrance. And this will give the interviewee confidence that your organization is committed to those inclusive practices. Another thing to consider, and that we've come across before at the interview stage, is around paper forms. So are there paper forms for people to read or sign throughout the recruitment process? And have you considered alternatives? For instance, sending information to the individual in an accessible format to read using their technology, for instance, their screen reader. Okay, I think that brings us to the end of our content for today's workshop. And I'm going to hand back over to Maddie to open up for any final questions or comments.
Thank you, Claire. And we do still have about 5 minutes until 11 o'clock as a quick time check. So if anyone does have any questions for myself or Claire about an eye to the future, we would be, or diversity and inclusion within the workplace in general, we would be very happy to hear your questions if you'd like to raise your hand. And of course, if there's nothing that's coming to mind right now, we will be sending through a feedback survey by email today for you to complete some feedback and give us that feedback in a written format, and also reach out to us about potential lunchbox sessions. We are running lunchbox education sessions around accessible communication, accessible meetings, accessible recruitment, which we touched on today, so that you can equip your workplace with some education pieces about diversity and inclusion within the workplace, and general upskilling of your staff, and hopefully start to take those steps towards employing someone who's blind or vision impaired in the future, which we have candidates across Australia who are looking for employment opportunities to start their career or re-enter the workforce. And we would be very open to having a conversation with you about those opportunities if that's something that your organisation is interested in exploring and supporting in the future. So if there are no final questions, we do have a hand up. Who was that? My apologies. From Jody.
Yes, hello. Firstly, I want to apologise for being late. I thought it started at 10:30 South Australian time. So my question isn't related to any of the content because I only got about 5 minutes. So I just wondered, is this available on a link that I could watch afterwards? Is it being recorded?
Yes, this has been recorded, and the recording will be available on our website within the next week. So you'll be able to catch up on the content. And if you do have questions following that, we'd be very happy to hear from you there.
Fantastic.
Thank
you
you,
very
Jody.
much.
Fantastic. Well, thank you all for joining us today. And as mentioned, this was recorded, so it will be available on our website for you to revisit or share with your colleagues or anyone who might be interested in this content that we've presented today. And I hope you all have a wonderful week.
That concludes today's webinar. You can find out more at itothefuture.com.au. And Eye to the Future is an initiative of Blind Citizens Australia, informing, connecting, and empowering Australians who are blind or vision impaired.